money. Let us do a thought experiment. I'm a bank, okay? I decide I want to open a bank. And now you're allowed to put money in the bank, okay? So all of you get together and you put $5 million in the bank. Now $5 million. Now, why do you put $5 million into my bank? Because I promise you 1% interest, right? 1% interest. That's a really good deal. But now because I owe you some money, right? I owe you 1% interest, I now need to go make money for myself. So I have a friend who's building a restaurant, and he says, I need $5 million to build a restaurant, and after a year, I will pay you back 10% interest. Okay? 10% interest. And so I make a 9% profit, and I can use that to pay my employees, to pay myself a salary, to build a new building, okay? So now I want you to think about this. I'm the bank, I got $5 million in deposit money, then I gave out a $5 million loan. Today, how much money is in the bank? It should be zero. Logically, the answer is zero. In fact, zero is the answer that you are taught in economics. So in economics, you learn about the idea of the fractional reserve system. Okay? What's fractional reserve? As you say, you must leave behind a certain amount of money. It could be 7%, it could be 10%. It depends on the country, okay? Let's say 10%. So theoretically, I can actually lend out $5 million. I can only lend out $4.5 million. That's law as well. Okay, let's say I lend out $4.5 million, okay? Now how much money do I have in the bank? Yeah, $500,000, right? Okay, so again, this is what you're taught in economics. This is what makes logical sense, right? The correct answer, what actually happens in real life, is you now have $9.5 million. Okay, that is the correct answer. This makes no sense, right? But it happens in reality. And how do we know? Because over the past 20 years, Chinese banks, like the Bank of China, the Bank of Industry and Commerce, the Agricultural Bank of China, if you Google these banks, what you will see is, these past 20 years, these banks have become the largest in the world. How did that happen? Was it because Chinese people got rich and put all the money in the bank? No, that's not what happened. What happened, guys?
Supported by the country, the government.
Okay, what happened was these banks start to lend money out to corporations, to government, to people, to build skyscrapers, to build roads. In other words, the banks started to create money out of nothing in order to finance China's infrastructure projects. And that's what banks are allowed to do. They're allowed to print money, create money out of nothing. Okay, does that make sense? Now the question then is, wait a minute here. That's kind of absurd. How this system come into being? How is it created? Okay, well actually, there's a very easy explanation for where we got the system from. All right, so let me explain the history and the origin of the system. So in the beginning, it was merchants who engaged in finance, because merchants needed money in order to facilitate trade. Okay? And some merchants became extremely wealthy. And when they became very wealthy, they started banks in order to support trade and other merchants. Okay, so these banks traded in gold because that was the primary source and supply of money back then. Okay, so what happened is you would come and you would put your money your gold in the bank for safekeeping. And the bank would give you a contract, right? A contract is just saying, thank you for giving me your gold. I promise to give back your gold at any time that you want it. And that's what we call a receipt, right? And this would allow for better and easier trade. Because now I can take this contract and I can go to England, okay? Maybe I'm based in Italy. But now I can go to England and say, listen, I need to buy cotton or bananas from you. And the person is like, well, what are you gonna give me? I'm gonna give you gold, right? So I take the receipt and I give it to you, right? And why do we do this? Because it's a lot easier than giving gold to other people. And so this system would facilitate trade throughout the world. Doesn't make sense. Now, I'm the bank. I have all this gold, and I want to make money with it. So I want to give it to other people. So other merchants would come to me and say, listen, I need gold. Can you lend me out gold? Right? But I say to him, yeah, but if I give you out the gold, you have a security issue. It's inconvenient for you. So why don't I give you a receipt, a contract instead? Does that make sense? Because all I need is a contract, all I need is a receipt in order to go and do trade elsewhere. Right? So by doing this, what I've done is I've doubled the gold in my bank, right? I've created money out of nothing. So the gold is still 5 million. That hasn't changed, but the receipt is now 5 million plus 5 million. So theoretically, I now have 10 million in the bank. All right? So that's how money and finance works. This system looks great. I can print money out of nothing, but there's a problem with this system. What is the problem? The problem is that if everyone wants to go at the same time, I go bankrupt, right? Because I lose my reputation. The contract says that at any time you want the gold, I must give it to you. But if I have if there's $100 million in gold contracts, but I only have $10 million in gold, only if 15 million wants the gold back, then I'm screwed. If this is what we call a bank run. Okay, a bank run. And this is a huge problem for merchants. Okay? There's also another problem with the system, and the problem is this. Who do I usually lend my money to? Do you guys know? If I'm a bank, if I'm a merchant, who do I usually lend my money to? Kings and noble people. And what do they do all the time? Why do they need money? To fight wars, okay? That's why there's a demand for gold. Because if I'm a king, I need to fight a war, usually against my brother or someone else to control this territory, right? Now, the problem with this is I could get killed, in which case, oops. But also, what's much more common is the king would be like, screw you, bank, I don't need to pay you back. Okay? So there's actually a lot of risks with this system. So over time, develop a system to mitigate or reduce this risk. Okay? What would they do? What they would do is they would create cartels. Cartels are just partnerships. So maybe this bank works with another bank, throughout Europe. And the way they establish these cartels is usually through intermarriage, right? They would marry each other. They would combine together. And that way, let's say 15 million of receipts wants back the gold, but there's only 10 million. Well, guess what? You just go to another bank. Okay? And let's just say a king decides, I'm not going to pay you back, bank. Well, your bank works with other banks to establish a new enemy to kill the king to get the money back. Do you understand? And this system is what we call today central banking. And what you will learn in this class is central banking controls the world today. Okay? Now, what's really important about this system is that it's based on power. Right? And what power is, it can turn nothing, money, the contract, into everything. Okay? That's what money is. Okay, so we live in a world in which banks can print out money, right? So now, let's ask ourselves a question. Wait a minute here. If the banks can print as much money as possible, why do we have poverty? Right? Because we can just give money to poor people and they wouldn't be poor anymore. Why do we have poverty? If there's all the food in the world that we want, why are people starving still? Why?
Because we don't have limited resources.
Okay, so we don't have limited resources, we have scarcity, okay? Right, so that is the common answer, scarcity. We have poverty because of scarcity. But I already told you this. They can print money out of nothing. So money is infinite. Money is an infinite resource. So why do we have poor people then? That's kind of strange.
With money, aren't money just, used for trade? They still have limited resources and, the actual need, the actual needs.
Okay, so you see what's happening is this. You all believe money is scarce, okay? But I just spent the past 10, 20 minutes explaining to you, it's not scarce, it's infinite. Because it's just a number. We can at any time print out as much money as we need, okay? So that's how power works. Power has brainwashed you into thinking something that is not true. You've been taught from the first day that money is scarce. But it's not scarce, it's infinite. And no matter what I say to you, you still believe this, okay? So you have to get that out of your head. Money is not scarce, it is infinite. So let's go back to the question. Why is there poverty in this world? Why do people starve? Why is there inequality in this world? Why are there poor people? Why are there rich people? What's the answer?
Because they don't print infinite money.
Okay, because it's scarce. Okay, so guys, this is amazing, okay? You guys can't get out of your head. You think money is scarce. You think it is not possible to print infinite money, when I already told you it is possible to print infinite money because they do this all the time. Yeah?
The one who has the power don't want everyone to share the same.
Yeah,
Right there.
because we don't want people to all have money. The powerful people don't want that. That's exactly the answer. And why? Because otherwise, no one would work. Do you understand? The point of putting money is not to give you money. The point of putting money is to create the illusion that money is valuable, and therefore you work hard in order to obtain it. But in order for me to make you want to get money, I need to create artificial misery. Do you understand? Right? If there weren't poor people, you wouldn't want to be rich. It's only because you see people suffer that you would want to go make money for yourself. What do your parents tell you? Your parents tell you, work hard in school, make a lot of money. Otherwise, you're going to end up like a poor person. Right? Well, guess what? If there are no poor people, your parents couldn't say that to you. And you wouldn't want to work hard in school. Right? That's why we have poverty. Because poverty creates the illusion that money is valuable. In other words, poverty isn't what you do to yourself, it is what the powerful do to you. Now let me ask you another question. You guys have studied some economics. Why do you have like crises? Crises. For example, there's a stock market crash. Or for example, the economy goes down and people lose their jobs. Why do you have crises?
I don't know.
Exactly. You're not taught this in economics class. That's kind of weird, right? The point of crises is to destroy money. Why do we need to destroy money? Because if there's too much money in the system, people don't have to work. So you have to destroy this money in order to make people feel money is scarce. Okay, does that make sense? So why do we have wars? Right? Why are there wars in the world then? Because they're fighting over scarce resources, right? I already told you, scarcity is a lie. The real reason is war is meant to destroy wealth in order to make you think money is valuable. Do you understand? You guys play World of Warcraft or these games, right? Guess what, guys? World of Warcraft in our world, there's absolutely no difference. You just run around pointlessly working hard to obtain credits in order to buy stuff. If credits just flew out of the sky, because they could do that, right? They could actually program the engine to just put money out of nothing, you wouldn't do nothing every day. You wouldn't play the game. Okay? It's only because you believe that there's scarcity in the world and that you must work hard to obtain wealth that you do any work. Do you understand this? Okay? So this world that we live in, it's a complete illusion created by central banking in order to make us work as hard as possible. Because the real value is not money. The real value is the work we do. Okay, does that make sense, guys? All right, yeah?
Wanted to ask, you said scarcity is an illusion, right? But I understand that money can be printed infinitely, but resources such as food and land, they aren't technically unlimited. So, does scarcity still exist in other resources?
Okay, that's a great question, okay? So the question is, isn't food scarce? Because food is a finite resource, right? Do yourself a favor, okay? Go to the garbage dump somewhere, anywhere in Beijing, and see the amount of food that is wasted every single day. If food was scarce, why do we have food waste? Okay, so if you just do the mathematics, what you will discover is there's enough food to feed everyone. Okay? There doesn't have to be hunger and starvation. It's an artificial crisis. Okay, does that make sense? So you're right in that, yeah, the food's not infinite, but it's abundant. There's a lot of it, enough to feed people. Okay?